and welcome to Books in the World. I'm Madeline Mealy-Holt, and I am delighted to be a moderator, interviewer on Books in the World, one of the oldest, or if not the oldest, book talk show in the country. I've been in broadcasting and cable TV since 1978, 40-something years. Today we have Hank Phillippi. Ryan, I'm so delighted to have you and to meet you finally. It's been a while. Thank you for coming, Hank.
Well, congratulations on the longevity of the show. It's quite astonishing.
Yeah, it's the production of the Cape Cod Writers Center, and that started even before then. So it is probably not the oldest writers conference, but it's been around for a long time.
I've enjoyed it every time I've come. It's really a treasure.
Yeah. Well, Hank, you spoke at the last the writers conference a year or so ago, and we're going to talk about that a bit because you did some great tips for writers, and I just love listening to it. We're going to talk about that. But
I got a standing ovation at that conference. It was hilarious. I still remember that. It brings tears to my eyes to remember that. So it is wonderful when writers get together and talk about the craft and talk about our shared universes.
Yeah.
Writing is such a solitary thing to do. So when writers get together, we're all talking, and it's just great.
You're very generous, too. You're very generous, very thoughtful about the way you share your experiences with writers. And I think that if our viewers have not seen that speech, it's available on YouTube. I'm going to mention this again. But before we talk about writing, let's talk about mystery writing and some of your achievements. This is a world that some people are very familiar with. They read all these Hall of Fame writers who have given you those wonderful blurbs on your books and reviews, and some aren't. So, and some people know you well from being the on-air investigative reporter for Boston's WHDH-TV for quite a few years.
43 years.
43,
okay, we'll just say this.
Just get
I've been a television reporter for 43 years,
and
I'm really proud of that. It's really been such a wonderful career. I'm still on the air, so.
You're still on the air. You've won 36 Emmys, 34 Edward R. Murrow Awards, and dozens of other honors for your groundbreaking journalism. Good for you.
Isn't that great?
I'm
so enthusiastic about it. I still think that there are so many wonderful stories that I can still do. So I'm lucky as pie to have this job.
You are. I was going to ask you this. I know you've achieved some really landmark things. Things have happened as a result of your reporting. Can you just comment on anything? What do you feel really good about?
We've found profound problems in the 911 system, that we're sending emergency responders, police and firefighters to the wrong address in Massachusetts thousands of times a year, and we found out why that was happening, and that system got fixed as a result. We found firehouses, the places where firefighters live and work, in such terrible shape that they wouldn't pass fire inspection.
Oh, goodness.
The firehouses. And we convinced the legislature to appropriate millions of dollars to fix those firehouses. We found such deep problems in the mortgage banking and home improvement lending system that 3 new laws were passed as a result of our stories. I've gotten people's homes out of foreclosure and millions of dollars in refunds and restitution for consumers.
Oh, wow.
So, it's so interesting to be able, it's such a responsibility, but so wonderful to be able to have that joy of really being part of changing the world, of leaving a legacy, of having it matter that we have all existed. Being a journalist is, 43 years,
43
and
years.
I love it every day.
Well, not everyone can say that. So then you turn to writing, and I'm not going to ask you right now to talk about that, but I just want to make sure that we tell everyone that you are a best-selling author of 11 mystery novels, and you've won just about every award for crime fiction that's there. The Agatha, the Anthonys, the Daphnes, the
Macavity.
That's a new one on me. And the Mary Higgins Clark Award. And I think Mary Higgins Clark is well known to Cape people. She spoke here often.
She is the goddess of us all, isn't she? She's so elegant and so talented and so determined and such a groundbreaker. Mary Higgins Clark, truly one of my writing idols, and in her life. You know, she is such an inspiration to all of us.
Wow. Well, you have been talking, we can get right into your writing with this comment that you have been called the master at crafting suspenseful mysteries and a superb and gifted storyteller. And I can go on with reviews that I've read and comments. I like the one from John Lesquat, one of the most adept masters of the plot on this planet.
Isn't that funny? John Lesquat, John Lesquat himself, who is one of the most adept masters of plots on the planet. And so it's such a joy to receive accolades from writers who I love. I mean, I power through his wonderful legal thrillers. And to have him be enthusiastic about The Murder List and about Trust Me. Can you imagine opening the email from him? And there is, you know, one of my favorite authors having read The Murder List, having read Trust Me, and having such an enthusiastic reaction to it. It's one of the wonderful things about the suspense and mystery community, that everyone is so supportive and enthusiastic of their colleagues.
Well, as I've been interviewing authors for a few years, and we were talking about this before, I've learned how generous authors are too, because coming to the Cape to sit in the studio and to share your thoughts with this audience is an act of generosity, and it's supportive of the writers who are here.
Well, you know, writing is so solitary, and to get to talk to you and the viewers, your viewers, about my books, I mean, that is a joy to me as well. This whole career is a dream come true, and I'm so thrilled with The Murder List and Trust Me. My 11th book, that's crazy, The Murder List.
Talk about your evolution a bit, about your earlier books and how you got to these two, which I'm going to put right here because they're so attractive, and I think they'll add to our set.
Thank you. Well, they match. That looks so nice.
Plus, I know we're
The Murder List is the brand new one that's just out, and it's already a nationally best-selling murder list, not as a nationally best-selling novel.
Bestseller list.
On the bestseller list, one of those lists, all the lists. Right. And Trust Me is the previous psychological standalone that did equally well, and it's still in print and still beloved and still getting wonderful reviews. This is my first psychological thriller, a standalone. The Trust Me is The Murder List is also a standalone, which means this is one book, one story, not part of a series. A story that's the most important thing that ever happened in these people's lives. Mm-hmm. So in a standalone novel, anything can happen. And my goal in my books is to sort of pull the rug out from under the reader. My readers are smart. You know, they know how to read a novel of suspense, and they know when the author is trying to fool them. So I sort of want to turn the tables on the readers and have them gasping with surprise, you know, along the way. I want people to miss their stop on the commuter rail.
Not sleep all night.
Because they want to see what happens next. But you were asking about my beginnings.
Yes.
And it is the best story. Because I always wanted to be an author, ever since I was a little girl reading Sherlock Holmes and Agatha Christie. And I didn't start writing until I had a good idea for a novel, and that didn't happen until I was 55 years old. And I was at work, and I opened a spam email by mistake, and in it was something that really intrigued me. And I got the idea for secret messages in computer spam. And I thought, what a great idea for a book. So I came home, and this was 15 years ago, and I said to my husband, I have a great idea for a novel. I'm going to write a book. And Jonathan says, great, honey. He says, do you know how to write a book? And I said, how hard can it be? You know, I've read 1 million of them, which was so naive of me and so silly, because of course it's so difficult to write a good suspense novel. But I was determined, and I was devoted, I was obsessed, you might say. Yeah. And that turned out to be Prime Time, which won the Agatha for Best First Novel, and that was the beginning of my writing career. And now The Murder List is my 11th book.
11th book.
Yeah.
Now, you've talked about writing these psychological standalones, which I gather you really like doing, but you had 2 series before, and one is Charlotte McNally and Jane Ryland. Okay, good. Have you left them behind?
Well, that's interesting.
Are people asking for more?
Yes, people are asking for more. Charlotte McNally is an aging television reporter in Boston. She's 46. She's smart. She's successful. She's savvy, but she wonders what happens to a reporter in television who's married to her job when the camera doesn't love her anymore. I scraped the bottom for this idea, as you can tell. But they're sort of Nick and Nora Charles. They're sort of a lighter sensibility, smart, take place in Boston, strong female main character. But when I got the idea for The Other Woman, which is the first Jane Ryland suspense thriller, I had read an article, it's a political scandal. And someone in that article said, you can choose your sin, but you cannot choose your consequences. Okay. And I thought, oh, my book. And that became The Other Woman. And I knew that topic of fidelity and honesty and politics and scandal and responsibility to the public, I knew that was too big a story for a Charlie McNally series. That was too textured and important. So I began the Jane Ryland series, of which there are now 5. And there are the main character, Jane Ryland, who is a reporter in Boston, Jake Brogan, who is a detective in Boston, and she's on the trail of a big investigation, and he's on the trail of a murder, and their 2 stories come together. And yes, there will be more of each of those. But the thing that I learned about writing a series where there's a character that's continuing is that, the readers know that Jane Ryland is not going to die in the book because she's coming back for book 6 and 7 and 8, right? So we know that. So the suspense in a series has to come from something else other than the mortality of the main character. But in a standalone, in a psychological standalone, like Trust Me and The Murder List, anything could happen, right? It's all on the table because this is the only time we'll meet these characters. So anyone could be good, anyone could be bad, anyone could lie, and anyone could die. Anyone could die. And the power of that possibility that the readers know they have no expectations, they have no way of figuring out what's going to happen next. And I don't even know what's going to happen next in the books. So it's a surprise along the way.
Yeah. You have said a few things that lead me back to The Murder List, which is a book that I don't even want to say too much about it.
Thank you.
I think it's a joy when you know nothing.
It is.
Maybe you don't even know Hank Phillippi Ryan is a TV reporter or her husband's a lawyer, but I'm just telling everybody.
No, but I think
you know
that's
what I
so.
mean?
I think
like
that's so
coming
wise
to
of
it
you.
fresh.
Someone, a reader emailed today and said that she wanted to do she loved The Murder List and she wanted to do a review of it, but she was afraid of telling the story. And I said, just tell people you love it. Tell people how much you enjoyed it. It's not a book report, and that's what I think is so interesting about talking about books. But someone said once that one of my favorite reviews said, if John Grisham and Lisa Scottolini had a book baby, The Murder List would be it. And I think that's so perfect because that is exactly what it is. It's a psychological thriller about people who you might know, not in real life, but the kinds of people we know. Who have a conflict, who have a decision to make, who have high stakes. Rachel North is a law student in Boston who's married to Jack Kirkland, who's a defense attorney in Boston, and Rachel is also working for Martha Gardner, who is the prosecutor.
Which is so impossible.
Well, it is impossible.
It's impossible for them. That's part of the story.
And it's this twisty triple triangle of suspense of what each person wants and how far they'll go to get it, and who will get trampled along the way, and who will be next on the murder list. And as I said, I don't use an outline for my books, so I don't know what's going to happen until the next paragraph and the next scene and the next chapter, and that's what gets me to the computer every day. I think, I wonder what's going to happen. I wonder what's going to happen. And when people say, the ending of Trust Me, the ending of Murder List, you really surprised me. I'm like, yeah, wasn't that a surprise, right? I surprised myself. Talk about a surprise ending. I surprised myself.
What you say, and you've said this in your speeches as well, about not really knowing what's going to happen next and the characters motivate you. I was looking at some notes about Toni Morrison, who talked about the fact that she wrote because she wanted to read the stories. She wanted to read stories that she wanted to read, something like that.
Sure.
The stories that she eventually wrote were the stories that she wanted to read.
I think
you
that's,
know.
I mean, Toni Morrison, of course, is,
You
so
know,
wise. And
yes.
so, I think it was Harlan Coben who told me once to write the kind of book you love to read.
Yeah.
Because when you love it, when you're writing it, that passion comes through on the page, and your readers will love it too. I mean, I don't like graphic sex in books. I don't like graphic violence in books. I don't like inappropriate language in books. So I just don't put that in my books.
Right,
I
right.
like twisty, turny, deceptive, gaslighting, mind games. And my books are mind games, where
guess,
the violence comes
yeah,
from
yeah.
emotional manipulation and gaslighting,
Yeah.
not from grotesque blood and guts.
Do you want to say what gaslighting is real quick?
Remember the movie with Charles Boyer? You know this,
Yeah,
where he tried
I
to
sort of
trick
know
his
the
poor
answer to
wife.
this,
I
but
think
yeah.
Irene Dunn
Yeah,
played
yeah,
her, or Ingrid
yeah.
Bergman.
Yep.
One of those readers will tell us. And he would trick her by adjusting the gas lights in their home. And then when she would say, "What's wrong with the light?" he would say, "Well, nothing's wrong. It must be something wrong with
Right.
you."
Right.
And it's just a term that's evolved to indicate sort of emotional manipulation to make someone believe that the world is a way that they want it to be, or to keep someone off balance, or to keep someone vulnerable, or to keep someone second guessing themselves in order to take control of them. And we all know people who do that to each other or even to us. Try to make us believe what they want us to believe. Try to make us
It's a very popular term now. It's used in politics.
Yes,
for
yes,
one
indeed
thing.
it is.
We
Yes,
don't
indeed.
have
And
to go
I try to think about that in all of my books. What does truth mean?
Yes.
Everybody has their side of the story, and that's one of the things I highlight in both of those books. There are so many sides to every story, and what we believe and what readers believe depends on who's telling us the story. So in The Murder List, for instance, Rachel has a story that she tells, and you might believe that, and Jack has a story that he tells, and you might believe that. And Martha Gardner has a story that she tells, and you might believe that, and it's about the same thing. So what is the truth? And I want the reader to sort of feel like the jury to decide what's really happening and what's really true.
I heard you say this, and I keep thinking, some people don't think anything is true. Is there truth? Is there a truth? I guess in the legal world, there is truth if there's evidence in that
And this is so
sense,
perfect of you. This is exactly what I'm getting at, especially.
Right.
And trust me,
Yeah.
when it's about a reporter who's covering a murder trial and trying to write a true crime book like In Cold Blood. And she begins to wonder, how do you write a true crime book if you don't know the truth?
Yes.
And how do we know the truth? Is it what we want to believe? Is it what we do believe? Is it what somebody tells us to believe? Is it what somebody tells us over and over and over to believe? I mean, the cover of Trust Me says there are 3 sides to every story: yours, mine, and the truth. And that's how the world is.
Yeah. Well, these 2 books by themselves, great reading for anybody who just loves to read. I just read and read and read and turn pages and turn pages. I wanted to ask you, do readers think they can figure out these stories?
Well, do you, when you read books, do you look to see if you can figure out the end of the story? Or
I
do,
do,
you just,
but I can't.
Good. I mean, there are 2 kinds of readers, I think. There are the readers who pit themselves against the author and try to see if they can figure out the ending before the ending of the book. And there are the others who just sort of sit back and let the story take them away. And I understand that there are both kinds of people. When my husband and I watch movies on television, I'll say, "Oh, it's the brother.
Yeah.
Oh, that person's going to drown." And Jonathan will say, "Why would you say they're going to drown?" And I said, "Well, because there'll be a river. There's a river.
There's
the
a
author
river,
wouldn't
yeah.
put a river if there's not going to be a drowning." So I cannot just sit back and watch the movie. But Jonathan says, "Can't you just relax and let someone tell you a story?" And I say no. So I know readers try to figure out the ends of my books, and great. Let's see if you can do that.
Too bad if you do. It's much more fun to be surprised, I think.
See, I think so too. Yeah. I think so too. But my readers are smart.
Yeah.
And that's why they read my books, and that's why they're trying to deconstruct and see if they can see where I'm going. But as I said, I don't know what the ending is. So if I don't know, you shouldn't know either.
Oh, gosh. Now, you have been extremely generous with your writing advice. I called them Hankisms, and
Oh, no.
I sent you some notes a few days ago. And I wondered if you'd like to share some of the thoughts you've shared with your audiences about when to write, how not to give up, how not to worry about doubt. You have some great anecdotes about doubt.
Well, thank you. You know, doubt is such an interesting quality. I hesitate to say this, but I am full of self-doubt about writing. You know, I love it. I adore these books. I love how they turned out. But after all these years, I understand that writing is difficult. I tell writers, if you're having a hard day writing, welcome to the club, and that means you're a good writer. I mean, if it's easy and you're just sitting there every day banging it out, you're probably not working hard enough on it. It's a big, daunting task and a big responsibility. And I think doubt means you care about it. You know, maybe a therapist would tell me something else, but you know, I want every word to be perfect, and I want every part of the story to be perfect, and I want readers to love my books, and knock on wood, so far so good. But everyone has doubts. When you were reading the introduction that you just read, I thought, well, yeah, you know, I did win the Mary Higgins Clark Award. You know, so sometimes this works. And so some days I have bad writing days, and I sit at my computer and I think, this is really terrible. This is the worst thing anybody's ever read. And then I know I can fix it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a writer. I know I can edit it. I know I can make it better later. It's not a test. It's a joy. You know, my husband and I don't celebrate the anniversary of the day we met. We celebrate the anniversary of the day before we met. And we call it You Never Know Day, because you never know what wonderful thing is around the next corner. And I do think that's the same with writing. You just go for it and try it and see how it works, because you never know what wonderful idea you might have in the next flash of a moment of your imagination. I mean, there's a wonderful quote from Thomas Edison who says, when you think you have exhausted all of the possibilities, remember this. You haven't. Isn't that perfect? And so when I'm having a bad writing day and I don't know what to do, I just think, you know what? It's not that there's no answer. It's just that I haven't thought of it yet.
Do you remember your anecdote about making hats?
Oh. Well, you know, it's more, I do, because it's more Stephen Sondheim's anecdote, but I think of it all the time. There's a wonderful play by Sondheim called Sunday in the Park with George. And in one scene in that play, George Seurat, the main character, who's a French pointillist painter, you know this well, is on stage by himself with a blank sketch pad, and he draws a hat. And he says, look, I made a hat where there never was a hat. And it's a song about how he realizes that he's made this beautiful thing out of nothing but his own creativity, out of nothing but his own imagination. And it's a song about how we as human beings are the only creatures who can do that. We can make art, we can make literature, we can make novels out of nothing but our own imagination and creativity. And that's really incredibly special.
After so many years as a journalist, you then became a writer, and now you're doing both. And I wanted to ask you to think about, what do you get out of writing on a personal basis, and perhaps maybe even a life goal basis, that you don't get out of TV, or maybe they both bring you satisfaction? Do you have some thoughts about that?
No, that's such a lovely question. I think what I love is telling stories. And in television as an investigative reporter, and in writing crime fiction, it's about a character you care about and a problem that needs to be solved. You want the good guys to win and the bad guys to get what's coming to them. And in the end, you want some justice, and you want to change the world a little bit. And whether I'm doing investigative reporting or whether I'm writing my books, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to draw you into a good story. I don't want you to change the channel when you're watching my stories on television, and I don't want you to be able to put my books down. I want a riveting, page-turning, important, enlightening, enriching story, where when you finish the story, when you finish the book, you say, I never thought about the world that way. You know, that's making me think about something in a different way. So I love the immediacy of investigative reporting. I love the idea that I get to do a lot of research and then take something very complicated and make it into a visually engaging and compelling and important story for television, which is shorter.
Yeah.
I love, I get to use my imagination when I'm creating a novel, when I'm writing a story that's fiction. Then I can let go and write 100,000 words, and instead of taking a week or a month to write for television, it takes a year. It takes a year to craft a wonderful novel. So it's a different writer metabolism, even though the storytelling is very similar.
Well, I didn't think about this in all the thoughts that I've had about you and what to ask you, but you speak so deeply about your feelings about writing. I wonder if you ever thought about doing anything other than crime fiction.
No. I love this. I love writing crime fiction. From time to time, I think about what if I wrote true crime, if I could find a wonderful story to write a true crime book about. And as a result of that story, I wrote a fictional book about somebody writing a true crime book, which sort of brings up the philosophy, the difficulty of how do we know the truth. So you know what, I've got to tell you, I'm a crime fiction author. I embrace it, and I wouldn't change a thing.
Well, believe it or not, we've come to the end of our time on Books in the World. We've covered some ground. I wanted to encourage everyone to search for you on YouTube. The 2018 National Book Festival speech at the Library of Congress. Congratulations,
Thank
what
you.
a nice
I
honor.
was so honored by that. I was very nervous, but got to introduce Trust Me to the world at that marvelous convention. It was great.
That was beautiful. And then the 2018 Cape Cod Writers Center Conference, same topics and partially the same topics, but congratulations on the murder list.
Thank you.
I wanted to be sure to tell people that you got a Library Journal starred review, and to me as a librarian that means that every library in the country is buying it, and the bigger library systems are buying it by the 10s and 20s and 30s. So
it's been wonderful. The reaction to the Murder List and Trust Me, but Murder List is now a national bestseller, as Trust Me is. Who'd have thought this would happen? I'm so enthusiastic about what's happened to my books and my writing career, and the new book comes out in August. I'm thrilled with the whole thing.
Well, you're inspirational. Readers, please go to hankphillippi.ryan.com and go to your bookstores and to your libraries and have a wonderful time reading Hank's novels. Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.
It's been a delight.
What a joy to be invited. Thank you.